that there's something so special about you and me, babe. So just say the words, cause you know what it means to me, babe.
Welcome to the Babes in Sports podcast. My name is Jamie Hersch.
I'm Tori Roy. We're two friends navigating being mothers, wives, and successful women in the demanding, male-dominated world of sports. We are so happy to be back lately. We've been busy, actually. We're hoping that you guys are enjoying all the conversations that we're having as much as we have. There's a lot going on in the sports world, actually, right now that Jamie and I were actually watching as fans.
Such a concept. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know we could do that. So it has been really nice to do this and then talk about it with you guys on the pod. And today, especially, James, we're really lucky that we have someone who has been a friend of the pod and friends of you and I that we actually both go way back with.
Yeah, we're super excited to have another guest. And yeah, just to reiterate what you're saying, where this whole life that we get to live is kind of split up into different seasons, right? Like literal sports seasons, but also
that's how we look at things now.
Yeah, we look at it in seasons. And I am so thankful for this slower season of 3 weeks or so where all of the PWHL and the NHL are completely on pause because Olympics. And so I'm getting to do things like go to Zion with my family, which was really, really amazing. Believe it or not, even with a 6 and a 4-year-old, definitely worth it. Highly recommend. They had a great time. We camped.
That's a win.
We glamped. We did not camp. I want to be very clear about this. We did not pitch a tent and hang out under the stars. We did a little bit, but we stayed in a glamping site and a fully heated cabin with a working bathroom. And it was lovely.
That's really toughing it and roughing it out there, huh?
Definitely not roughing it, but we got e-bikes and put the kids on the back and they loved it. They loved everything about it to the point where my son cried when it was time to go back and he made a wish. We threw little stones into one of these like waterfall parts of the park. And I told them, pick out a really special stone and make a wish when you throw it in and maybe your wish will come true. And we're learning that, wishes don't always come true, but you still can make wishes. And my daughter wished for a Mirabelle dress. So there's that. So that's her wish. Maybe it'll come true. My son wished that we would stay another day in Zion, which was really sweet. And that did not come true. We had to go back. We had work and school and whatnot, but really, really sweet and special. And just a reminder that sometimes we think we need a break from our kids. And I feel like we sometimes just need a break from the monotony of life at home with the kids. If things are stressful, like sometimes getting away, even with the kids, can be really rewarding. Well, this week's guest is a longtime friend and colleague of ours. She has done everything from local sports to sideline reporting to studio hosting to sports talk radio. You probably recognize her best from her role right now as part of ESPN's College GameDay, telling some amazing stories. I've actually lost count of how many national Emmys she's won along the way, but it is a ton, you guys. Plus, of course, she's a mom to 3 great kids. So we are so happy to welcome Jen Lada to Babes in Sports. Hi, Jen.
Hi, guys. It's so good to see you. So do people know how we've all crisscrossed in our time? Do people know that Jamie and I worked together in Wisconsin back in the day? And now I'm back in Wisconsin, and that Tory and I have done features together. It's so great to see you guys having such success, and also how many people you meet at certain points of your career, and then it always seems to come back around. So yeah. I wanted to shout out you guys because I think very few people know what it takes to survive in this industry. And you guys are hands down survivors of this industry, right? I'm sure you all have crossed paths with people who are no longer doing what we're doing. And I try to remind myself of that every year that passes. Yep, tricked him again.
Yeah, sure beats working for a living. That's what I always say. No, it's funny. I had planned to, fill people in on kind of our history because it's a few years since we met. We go way back to, I want to say 2011, maybe 2012. I was a weekend sports anchor in Madison, Wisconsin. You were a sports anchor in Milwaukee at the time, and we were covering the Badger football team in the Rose Bowl. And I remember being a little bit starstruck because everyone was in awe of you. And you were the big Milwaukee anchor, and I was the middle mid-market size Madison anchor, and everyone was like, oh, Jen Lada's going to be there. Jen Lada, she covers the Packers. She knows people. She knows the Brewers and the manager. So I was like, this girl is where it's at. I got to get to know her and pick her brain. And you were so kind and generous with your time and encouraging. What do you remember most about those early days working in local sports in Milwaukee?
Yeah, I remember grinding. It was a lot of work. I remember long hours, especially on the weekends as the weekend sportscaster, and getting the grunt shifts too, right? I remember when the Packers went to the Super Bowl in 2011, I remember being told I had to stay back in Milwaukee, even though I had covered the team week in and week out throughout the season. And they were like, no, we need you to do morning sports.
Yeah,
So that
same
meant like
girl,
waking up,
same.
yeah, waking up at 4 a.m. and then doing like telling the recaps of what had happened the day before at some of the media avails. And so, that was difficult. But the most challenging thing was there was a stretch where I was a single mom when I was working in Milwaukee, and my son is 17 now, but at the time he was like 2. And I wasn't making enough money as the weekend sports anchor in Milwaukee to be able to afford these lengthy childcare shifts. So my initial solution was I would just go in late. Right. I would watch the sports events at home on my television, take notes, just, always, due diligence and whatnot. And then I'd go in around 4 o'clock. And finally, I got reprimanded and was told, no, you have to be here at 2:30. And I'm like, I can't afford to cover the childcare for that stretch. So I would bring him to work with me, and we'd bring a little backpack, and he'd have his coloring books and his snacks and maybe an iPad, and he would play while I wrote the sportscast. And look, I'm not trying to like convince anybody that what we were doing back then was super complicated. In fact, it wasn't. You're stacking a show, you're putting in codes, you're deciding what sound to use for what highlights to use for each of the games. But I was told implicitly that I wasn't allowed to bring my son to work with me. And I think that was the realization of like, it doesn't matter how good you are, there are going to be bosses who adhere to some sort of like principle of a situation. Cause the explanation I was given was, if we let you bring your child to work, we have to let everyone bring their child to work. To which I responded, are there other people who are asking to bring their children to work with them on a Saturday afternoon? Well, no. Okay. Well, so it was just a really like interesting time to be a woman in sports and to know that, there were going to be challenges that I hadn't expected. And I think the goal was always just keep plugging along, keep moving up, keep trying to find opportunities to do good work. And, I think I have done that.
I want to know if those bosses have reached out to you now, seeing your platform and where you are and what they have to say about that.
It's so because every once in a while I will cross paths with like these old bosses, and they always say never burn a bridge. And I don't think I'm burning a bridge, but I
No.
do gently remind them, hey, remember when I was in a real jam financially because you guys didn't really value the weekend sportscaster? And I'm going to be real like candid. I think I was making like $35,000 a year as the weekend sports anchor in Milwaukee.
Wow. In Milwaukee, which is like a pretty major market.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think it's really valuable to like let those people know. I loved doing what I did, and it obviously was a stepping stone to where I wanted to be, but it was by no means easy to make ends meet and do that job at that time.
Wow.
Well, Jen, I want to pull the curtain back even more, going in the theme of being candid here, because everyone sees you on College Game Day. We see the fits, we see the reports, we see the amazing storytelling that you're doing. But I think everyone needs to understand, and even me personally, because I want to know what your week looks like on a College Game Day week, not just the grind of reporting and features and being in the field, but then kids and family.
Yeah, super hectic. And you guys know, I mean, you just try to make it work as best as you can. You try to have a really strong support system, right? My husband picks up, obviously the shifts when I can't be here when I'm traveling. We have a couple of babysitters who we really rely on. We have family close by. And I think the most important thing is making sure that my kids don't feel neglected, right? I
Mm.
may have to be out of town for a work assignment. I may have to be in my office writing a piece, but try to really make sure that they know that they are a priority, even when I am juggling all of these things. So there have been times where I've had to say no to things professionally and for work. And it can feel very intimidating. It can feel very like, what am I doing? Is this the right call? But at the end of the day, I really try to prioritize my family and my kids and also get the work done in between. It works for me because I'm a high achiever and I am better when I'm going, right? When my schedule is full is like when I'm like most optimal, when I'm like performing at my highest level. So that works for me to have to go from one thing to the next. But we get our features assignments probably either Sunday or sometimes as late as Monday morning. Then we're on a plane Tuesday or Monday, depending on when we got it, shooting the feature, doing the interviews. So on the plane ride, oftentimes we're writing questions so that we make sure that we are prepared for the interview. We don't want anything slipping through the cracks. I try to do quick turns, which GameDay is all about quick turns as far as the features goes. But when I'm doing traveling, I try to go out morning of and come back the night of. It's not always possible, but my goal is I'd rather be out on a 6 a.m. flight and then back in my house, even if it's by midnight. It feels like a long day, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming as overnight trips, which again are sometimes required. But whenever I can, I try to do these long days for the feature shoots, and then writing and putting the piece together, putting all of the sound bites in order, putting the tracks together, and then obviously the process with the producer of how are we going to tell this part of the story? What do we have as far as assets go? And then I travel to GameDay on Friday morning. Same thing. I'm usually out on a 5:30 or 6:30 flight, going to the GameDay site. I do college football live on Friday afternoons. Hopefully at that point, I've sort of handed it off to the producers and to the editors for the piece. And then we we present it on Saturday morning on GameDay. So, the things that people don't realize that are required as well is like wardrobe. When are we picking out outfits that we're wearing on television? When are we getting our hair dyed? When are we getting our nails done? I used to get a spray tan every week, which I no longer do because who has time for spray tans? But like all of that little like maintenance stuff as well has to somewhere fit in there, because like it or not, there are still certain standards and certain expectations for what a woman looks like on television. And so, you try to like make sure you're presenting yourself still in the most professional and polished way as possible.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's one of the most stressful parts of the job and one of the least talked about. And sure, some people really enjoy that part. And who doesn't like getting dolled up, especially if you have someone professional doing your makeup and your hair? But I have now pivoted positions. And so I'm doing my own makeup and hair for the first time in like a decade. And so I've had to kind of like learn how to do my makeup, and even like shopping for makeup. Like I don't actually like shopping, believe it or not. I just never have. When I was a little girl, my mom used to like shop because she loved shopping. She would buy stuff, bring it home, I'd try it on, and then whatever I didn't like or didn't fit, she'd bring it back. Like I understand how privileged and spoiled that sounds, but that was my reality. And so I never liked shopping. So now that I'm an adult and my mommy does not buy my clothes for me, I need to like actually set aside. It's like stressful. Like if the hockey season is coming, which is when I do the bulk of my work, it's like an anxiety-inducing experience where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 2 weeks to, like you said, get nails done, get hair done, go shopping for several hours, which is not something I enjoy doing. And again, anyone listening to this is like, oh, cry me a river, blah, blah, blah. But that is truly a stressful part of my job.
But I can't tell you the number of times, guys, that I've gotten messages from people that are like, you should really get your nails done if you're going to be on television. And like, there's still this archaic mindset of, what do I look like versus what is the work?
Yes.
And is it a small, is it a vocal minority? Yes. Is it a small percentage of the comments that I get on my work? Yes. But there are still people out there who think that you should look a certain way. And I got to be honest with you, this is why I rebel with my like hooded sweatshirts and my ball caps the rest of the year. I always think back to like some of these high achievers, and Nick Saban always comes to mind for me because obviously he's a colleague of mine on GameDay. But he always talked about how like minimize the decisions that you have to make throughout the day. So when I'm not on television, one of the decisions I have chosen to eliminate is what I'm going to wear on any given day. And so it's hoodies, it's ball caps, it's because that takes that whole like anxiety of, how does this outfit look? I don't care. You know what I'm saying?
Fact.
And especially on radio, it's so freeing just to be able to go on the radio and dress like this and be kind of comfortable, as opposed to, gosh, did I put together a good outfit today? Is it as good as yesterday? Like, I don't want to worry about all that mental. I don't want to give that any sort of time or bandwidth.
And, you should have seen, and I hope that Jamie brings back her USA hat and jersey that she was rocking last week, because that is what we are about. But today she didn't bring it back. But,
No,
Jenny,
I have another sports t-shirt on instead. I'm also in sweatpants. So, this is from the Twins.
Obviously.
But
Jen, you were talking about the kind of the beauty and the chaos of the quick turn, which I think we all know well in doing what we have to do on the sports timeline, right? How do you find that your brain functions in life because you're so used to the got to get this done, got to get this done. Okay, it's done, great. Like, do you find yourself functioning like that in your mom life too? Because I find that because I don't know any other way. And I think the sports world and storytelling quick turns have taught me that.
Yeah, and sometimes even in the household, right? Like if there's something that needs to be done, my brain will want it to be done now.
Immediately.
And my husband's been really good about like, that's not important right now, right?
Right.
Perfect example. Last night I pulled my daughter's clothes out of the dryer. I set them on the dining room table. My plan was to go to bed. But there was this like nagging, oh, what about those clothes? It'll only take you 5 minutes if you just do the clothes. And sure enough, I said it out loud as I'm doing it. And my son walked in the room and I go, this doesn't need to be done right now. And he goes, then why are you doing it? And I was like, go to bed. Like, but like, yeah, there is that concept of, because everything is so tightly scheduled during the football season, sometimes my brain doesn't know how to recalibrate in the off season. And I will say this, it takes me a good 2 weeks at minimum to sort of reset my nervous system after the football season.
God, I bet.
So much of it is go, 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 catch a flight, get an Uber, get to the place, knock out the interview, catch a flight, and so you're existing sort of in these very slim timelines. And so I think I am in survival mode for most of football season. And it's not ideal, but it is what's required to survive that stretch, which I always say is like a 25-week stretch.
This is half the year.
Yes.
But that's also what makes you great, though, right? Because it's not for everyone. It's not.
Well, and that's what I always try to remind people, like when we have negotiations and things like that for contracts, I want to say to the executives, like, part of what you're compensating me for and part of why you're rewarding me with this job is because I can do it. And not everyone can. You can't throw everyone into the madness. You can't throw everyone into the circus. There are certain people who have, I feel like I've created, or I've got this immunity to that chaos, but I think that there are a lot of people that if you threw them into that season in particular, they would break pretty quickly.
Yeah. I would raise my hand and say I would be one of those people who breaks. Like I love sports. I've always loved sports, but I even struggle with like these long road trips I've gone on with like the Golden Knights where we're gone for 8 days. I have one coming up. And after about like day 3 or 4, I'm just like not a super happy person. My husband and I aren't really talking that much on the phone at that point. Like he's in survival mode trying to balance everything back home. And if I had to do that every single week, like I'd probably break. So I am super impressed by what you do. And I know it's like shorter trips, but it's the regularity of it that I think is just exhausting, and not knowing what city or what hotel room you're waking up in. Like, whew.
Well, and finding out, guys, like I always tell people, this is the difference with GameDay as well. When you get your hockey schedule, Jamie, you know where you're going to be on any given day. The beauty of GameDay, of course, is that it changes week to week, and we only find out either Saturday night or Sunday morning where we're going to be the following weekend. So when you were talking about wardrobe planning and things like that, are we going to be in Montana or are we going to be in Tuscaloosa? Like, who can say?
That is so crazy. I wanted to just go back a little bit too, to kind of just thinking throughout your career, right? Because you said your son's 17. So you've had like several different and very unique chapters of working in sports while being a mom. So there was the local sports chapter. I don't know if people know you were a sideline reporter with the White Sox. And there was another time where you and I kind of crossed paths, which was really fun, the AL Central sideline reporting biz. You were a studio host for a while at ESPN. I know you've done a lot of radio like you talked about as well. And certainly now with GameDay with all the challenges that you've mentioned. But like, which role do you think was the easiest to hold as a mom and which was the most difficult?
Ooh, I got to be honest. I think this current chapter that I'm in is the easiest to hold as a mom because even though the football season is chaotic and demanding, and I feel like I'm losing my grip on reality almost the entire time, once it's over, I get to go home and I get to be that present mom. And I get to have these days where I do radio in the morning. I leave the house at 6:30. I do radio from 7 to 9. My husband gets the girls off on the bus. My son obviously gets himself to school. And then I have the day to sort of breathe and exist and do podcasts and, go to Home Goods and go to the gym and that for me is so fulfilling to have that off time. I kind of compare it to like a teacher who has, has that demanding job, that incredibly important job for the whatever it is, 9 months out of the year, and then has summers off of the year. And it's not just about like, oh, I deserve to be off. It's that like, this is the reward for running myself ragged for the duration of the college football season. And this is when I think my kids so much look forward to me being around and being present and contributing, whether it's with projects or practice and so look, I always wanted to be a mom. It wasn't something that I like stumbled into. It was like a conscious decision to have a family, to lead a family. And so it's not something that I want to rush through. It's not something that I want to wish away. If anything, I want time to slow down. Everything's going so fast. My oldest is applying to colleges now, and I know he'll be off, to college within the next year and a half. And so just really in the off season, treasuring that luxury that the, again, incredibly demanding, incredibly difficult role on GameDay provides.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know, Jamie and I feel like we just like hear that so hard because we talk about it to each other as friends and on this podcast multiple times. And we want people listening to understand that you're not alone in these feelings and also in the gratifying feelings that you do get from it. Like there is the payoff. And with that, Jen, like a couple months ago, we actually shared To Be a Mom on our podcast. And that was one of my favorite stories, obviously, about, these badass female athletes on Mother's Day. But having those opportunities to collaborate with you, I've witnessed not only what a talented writer you are, but your compassion when you're interviewing people, right? And I feel that the perspective of a mother kind of allows that trust to build a little bit more. I mean, how do you feel when you're approaching an interview subject and you want them to trust you? They're welcoming you into their home. How do you think that being a mom helps?
Well, tremendously.
Yeah.
And I know, Tori, that you deal with this as well. One of the most challenging things about telling other people's stories is getting them to trust you. And sometimes it's, self-fulfilling, where if you've done good work, which you certainly have, you can rest on that and you can, people can look you up and they can see what you've done and they can see sort of what the finished product is, but it also doesn't illuminate what the process was. So you still have to convince these folks that you are coming to them with empathy and you are interested in telling an accurate and honest portrayal, but also that honors their truth, right? That's always so important, especially with these heartfelt stories where people have been through adversity or experienced tragedy or trauma. It's like, I'm not going to take advantage of you being willing to share that story. And so I think it's just going in with a softness that motherhood really allows and encourages, seeing people as people instead of seeing them as a story subject.
Yeah.
And, it's great because at this point, it's just innate. It's not something I have to like flip a switch and that's just how you treat people, with an appreciation for being given the opportunity to tell their story. And look, I'll be honest, like there was a time in my career where that didn't come naturally to me, where I was, and again, we're so conditioned, you guys know, to be badasses, to be hard nosed, to go toe to toe with the men in our industry, to, have that edge. It's required to survive as a woman in sports. And if anyone tells you that it's not, or that, you're playing into narratives or tropes, they don't know what it takes to survive and still be around after decades. So, you have to then be able to use that duality, right? That toughness obviously plays a role that, will elevate you in the career, but you also have to be able to have that empathy and be able to have that softness, especially when you're telling human interest stories, when people are inviting you, as you said, Tori, into their home and sharing what I always say is some of the toughest things they've been through, right? Human nature is to shield oneself from pain. right? It's why people suppress negative memories, negative experiences. And what are we asking them to do? Hey, could you dig into that scar for me? Could
Yeah.
you talk about that horrible thing that happened to you and your family?
And here's a
And do
bright light and a bunch of cameras and a bunch of strangers sitting around you. Can you do that?
with some level of, be concise, but also descriptive, and also like, no, it's asking a lot. And so to
Yeah.
your point, I think it really, really matters how you approach it and the way that you show them that you're really there for them.
Well, you do a really beautiful job. And obviously, I mentioned it earlier, but you've got the Emmys to prove it. And even all the awards aside, like I know you don't do it for the awards, you do it for just the passion of storytelling and the privilege of getting to share these stories. And so, anyone listening, like be sure to go to Jen's Instagram because she's got a lot of clips posted from some of her stories. And can they find it on YouTube too? I mean, where can we see some of your
Yeah,
best stories?
Instagram's really good about, populating all of our stories. So that's really great. They share it on their socials as well. I mean, I saw a story the other day that we had done a couple of years ago in advance of the draft. One of the young men, Derek Hall, who obviously just won the Super Bowl with Seattle, we had told that story as an SC featured. And because he's now a Super Bowl champ, they've been playing that story and bringing it back out.
Nice.
And I love, guys, the permanency of the storytelling that we do. And it's taking nothing away from any of the other positions and any of the other jobs. But I don't know that people remember conversations that are taking place on the shows. I don't know that people remember or are sharing, with any sort of regularity, some of the other things that, people do in the sports space. But I know that they share the stories and I know that they impact them and they feel them. And then, to the point about Derek, it kind of come back around when there are these big moments in these guys.
Totally. And not only being able to relate to your interview subjects as a mom, like if you're interviewing parents, but also I'm so curious to hear if you're now having a teenage son, like how much has that helped you engage and interact with some of these players in college who are really, really close in age to your son?
Crazy. I think about that all the time. Chase has such different interests than I do, and he'll show me or send me videos and it's such a peek inside sort of the brain of a teenager. And then I go into these rooms and I'm sitting across from teenagers and it wouldn't serve me to think that they are, 45 like I am or even
No, and there you're
25.
like 6'7" or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it's real, and he helps me to know like when that stuff isn't cool
Yeah.
anymore, right? Like I used the word Riz the other day and he was like, "Nah, mom, we're past Riz. Like nobody's saying Riz anymore." And I was like, "Darn it." Like I just caught up. I just, thought I was doing such a good job. But he's a great barometer for, what those aged athletes are into and the mindset. And I think it's such a tricky time for, kids in general with social media and the phones and all of these things that sort of steal their attention. I was telling Chase the other day, he's studying for the ACT, and I said, "You're at a disadvantage compared to me because I didn't have a computer in my pocket that was distracting me from what I needed to do on any given day and any given moment." I said, "The biggest challenge for you and your friends right now on the ACT is how do you focus on something for
Right.
4 hours?" Right?
That's so
Most
true.
people can't even watch a movie without checking their phone
Yeah.
or, and like we're watching a show while we're also scrolling and like, so it's that fragmented attention. And I was telling you, you're going to have to build that muscle up, in order to be able to survive the ACT.
You're so right. I didn't even think of that, but you're right. It's like we look at our big screens and then we look at our small screens and our medium screens with our big screen in the background. There's so many screens and so much happening. And man, I didn't think about that, but you're right. It is tricky. And it's weird too to me that
Yeah,
colleges are
we're at
still
6'7" world right now. We're
like, why are colleges still using the ACT in the first? I don't know. That's a whole other conversation, but it's wild. What a wild time.
honest, and I don't think it is said or heard enough in this industry because it's almost like we have to stifle these emotions or these feelings or these truths that we find and that we have had for decades. Like you said, we are survivors of this industry for a reason. And the reason why Jamie and I wanted to do this podcast is to get it out there and to make it, to like normalize it, which is such an odd thing to say, right? But it should be, from everything from what we're talking about to things like miscarriages, things like IVF, things that like you're almost shamed to talk about. But no, like this is how we get through it together. And that's why I think you and I especially are so compelled to work in storytelling, because one story could impact someone else's journey, right? And to me, that's the biggest payoff, is not only sharing that motivational story that someone went through, but if someone else needs a little push, we can give that to them. And what other, what other place can do that for people? So
Right. And I guess I didn't realize, I've always known that the stories have permanency and that there's always the chance that somebody has seen something that we've done in the past, Tori. But it came really like right in front of my face a few years ago when we did a story on organ donation. And as I was sitting across from this woman who was telling me about her sister who had died and had donated her lungs, she said, "Can I tell you all a quick story?" And Alex Nolan, producer, and I looked at each other and we're like, "Yeah." And she said, when my sister died, a few weeks prior, we had been watching College GameDay, and we saw a story about a little baby who had died and whose heart had gone to another little baby from a different SEC school. And she said, and I thought, wow, that's so wonderful that, that family was able to give the gift of life to someone else. And she said, and as I'm sitting in the hospital and my sister is dying, I remembered that story from just a few weeks before. And I thought, I wonder if Megan would also be able to be an organ donor. And
Wow.
it was one of those moments where I was like, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Like, and Alex was like, hold up, time out. We
Where's
need
the
a
camera?
break. And she said, Jen did that story. Jen did that story on the two babies in the SEC who, one had passed away and donated their organs and another was able to live because of it. And we just had this really incredible moment of like, holy cow, these stories really do make an impact. People really remember them. And then when they're in this moment and trying to figure out what the next step is, it's like sparked in this woman's head. And so that was just so powerful. This concept of like, the permanency again and the ability to show up, in these really challenging moments and inspire people and like sort of dictate their journey. So that doesn't happen every single week, of course, but it was just an example.
It would,
Yeah.
emotion.
Right. It was just an example of like, oh my goodness, what we're doing matters, and sometimes you need that validation, not just from your bosses and not just from people in the industry, but from people who are experiencing the work.
And that's why I think we love what we do at the end of the day, because yes, it's sports, but it's so much more than sports, and that's a gift. So I'm honored to share this with you guys and Jen with you, and we can tell those stories together. So, all right, let's lift it up a little bit with some rapid fire. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right. As a fan, Jen, totally unbiased, what team do you genuinely love watching?
Okay, so I thought about this after I saw the question, and I can't answer it in any like definitive sort of way. And here's why. I love competition. I was over in Europe covering the Special Olympics World Games. And of course, you're acclimating to the time change. So, of course, I'm up in the middle of the night, and there was table tennis on the television in Europe. And I sort of had it on as background noise because sometimes when you go into a new hotel, you need to just like feel comfortable. It doesn't feel so sterile and like uninviting. And so I just sort of had it on in the background, and I sort of kept looking at it as it was going by. And then eventually I was like really fully watching this table tennis match that was in a different language. They weren't even speaking English. And it captured me. And like, so I love whatever is happening as long as there's a good game going on or good competition, or like super into the Olympics right now. We watch NBA basketball. We obviously, pay very close attention to the NFL here in Wisconsin. But like, sports is sports. If we throw together a game of horse in the yard or in the driveway, like that's something that I'm completely in love with. So I know that sounds really simple but it's why I think I've always loved being in this space. There's so many stories to tell, of course, but also like I love this idea of going out there and like putting your best foot forward and working really hard and showing, all of the hard work that went into it. And so there is no one sport or no one team that I'm like more jazzed about watching than any other team or sport on any given day.
I think that's a perfect answer, and I can relate to it so much, Jen. I started coaching D3 women's tennis, and I can't get enough of it. Like, for that reason, it's so awesome. Like, we had 2 matches over the weekend, and they were really tight, and we won both of them, and I was losing my mind. So
Yeah.
I'm so with you. I can't get enough. Okay, this is important. self-care routine that you never miss.
I gua sha my face every day. Very into like the snail serum right now, the Ambroli moisturizer.
Wait,
I have
wait, wait, wait. Snail serum? What is that?
Yeah, snail serum. I wish I had it here. I could show you guys. But so my makeup artist here in Milwaukee she's a queen. She does incredible work. But the way she preps my skin is she uses the snail serum, which you can get on Amazon, and she puts that on. So she first sprays me with the mist. Do you guys use the antibacterial mist?
Yes.
Gotta do when you're traveling, gotta do it.
That's
Like
a
you get on
must-have.
those airplanes, it's a no brainer. It's a deal breaker if I don't have it. But so first you spray with the antibacterial mist. Then she layers on the snail serum. Then she puts on the Ambroli, I think I'm saying it right, moisturizer, which is this
Yeah.
little tube. And again, it's on Amazon. It feels thick, it feels decadent, it feels so good. And then she goes in with like the makeup routine. Well, I don't wear makeup most days. It's another way that I'm like revolting. But I also think that like I also love this idea of this is what a makeupless face looks like, right? I have mascara on, I have my tinted moisturizer / sunscreen on, and then I put lipstick on right before so that I didn't have these pale lips. But I do think it is valuable to like present yourself to the world without a ton of makeup on. I think that's
Yes.
valuable for our daughters. I
Especially as
think
a
it's
mom with girls. Yes.
valuable.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's always been a thing for me as well. And then I gua sha. So I take my gua sha stone and I, up,
Oh,
up, 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 up. Everything is up. We are lifting. We are and I do that every day. And I actually do it, you guys, in the commercial breaks of the radio show. So I just literally have it sitting there next to me. And when we go to commercial break and the stream goes off, I'm just there like
What
tugging
is
at the
this
skin,
stone? I'm
pulling.
like Googling it right now.
yeah, I want to
I
see
don't
that
know
on
any
camera.
of these secrets.
Get the stainless steel gua sha stone. I think it's like maybe $15. It is. I think it's a
Guasha?
game changer.
You're educating me so
Someone who
much right
to
now.
shop.
How do you spell guasha?
I think it's like GUASHA. Does that make sense? Is it showing up? Are
There
you
it is.
Googling?
Yes, GUA. Okay.
Thank
Jamie's
you.
mom, if you're listening, please get this for Jamie.
I know. Yeah, we got to get sponsored now by the guasha people. But seriously, I'm so bad at skincare, and I know it's so important for people, especially who work in our industry that wear heavy makeup. But yes, thank you for that.
Well, you're
And
the
then
one
I
educating
wear
her.
a ball cap almost every day, right? Like it's not great for the hairline. I'm always like, ooh, maybe I need Nutrafol, okay. But I keep the sun off my face, right? Like I love the sun. I feel better when I'm outside, but I try to keep the ball cap on because I know that then my face isn't getting the sun damage and sun exposure.
Yeah,
Nail serum, that's a first on the pods, was not on my bingo card.
I've heard of it, but I haven't tried it. I like it. That sounds awesome.
One storyline or matchup that you're especially excited about right now.
Storyline that I'm excited about right now. So I have a master story that I pitched, and I don't know how you guys feel, but Tori, when I pitch a story, I've only pitched it because I really believe in it, right? I'm not just one of these people who's like throwing spaghetti, like, oh, maybe they'll think this is cool, maybe they'll think this is cool, and
I
then if I
that way.
find it, no, because then if I get assigned it, I'm like, oh, great. So that story I have no interest in doing. So I'm really excited about I've been digging into the masters a little bit more, seeing some of the storylines. And the story that I'm hoping to do is about sort of an up and comer that nobody really knows that much about. And so, it's the opportunity to maybe introduce him to the audience. People will certainly be seeing this young man when the Masters kicks off in a month or so. So I like this idea of being like, hey, this is somebody that you should know. And again, what I always tell people about what we're trying to accomplish on game day is it's my job to make you care about and maybe even root for somebody that you wouldn't have gone into that Saturday rooting for. And the number of
Totally.
times I get posts or messages from people that are like, man, I'm a Michigan fan, but I'm going to be cheering for that Ohio State kid or something like that warms my heart. Then I'm like, okay, we've succeeded. We've taken a hated rivalry and we've made that person see this person as a person,
Yeah.
and so that to me is like, so that's what I'm working on right now, a storyline that I'm really excited about.
No, and that's what it's all about, right? And especially for golf, right? Like the casual fan is not watching golf all year round until you get to the Masters. So we need those stories, we need those profiles so that people know who they're watching and what they're about.
When we were coming up, right, you could just rattle off American, American, American. And so how do we get the audience to be invested in these athletes who have incredible journeys, who have incredible stories, but they just might not know because they haven't been exposed to them.
Exactly, until we tell our story at the Masters. I have one of these every day, Jen. What's a recent mom fail?
Very excited about this because I obliged and came up with one for you guys on Saturday. So this is my hand currently. Super attractive. Somebody asked on the radio today if it was if I'd gotten in a fight. I didn't. UPS got the notification. Motion.
True storytellers build the drama, That's what she does.
This is slightly embarrassing, but I do feel it's important to talk about because I think it's something that could happen to a lot of people. I was getting my workout in the basement on Saturday evening. We were going to Disney on Ice Saturday night, so I was like, I got to get my run in beforehand. And my kids are always asking me, my 8-year-old and my 6-year-old, can we go on the treadmill? Can we go on the treadmill? And we always say no. We're like, no, it's a grown up thing. Occasionally, I will let the girls walk on it if we're like right there standing behind them. And so I sort of gave in and said, okay, to my youngest, who's 6, you can walk on the treadmill, but I'm going to stand right behind you. And so I did. And she was going about 1 mile an hour and then, or whatever the things are, 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
it's the Peloton treadmill. And she now was kind of doing a little shuffle. She's certainly not running. She's certainly not. And sure enough, she lost her footing and the treadmill pulled her back as soon as she fell, threw her back. She got stuck between the wall and the treadmill and it scraped off her face.
Oh no.
And this is my hand from me pivoting around because I was right behind her on the treadmill. Like it was like, this wasn't unattended. This wasn't negligent. This wasn't like I'm in the other room and she's screwing around on the treadmill. I was literally right behind her thinking I was doing all of the things to keep her safe in a situation. And it got really gnarly really quickly. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
PSA to other parents, like even if you think that you're monitoring it, like the treadmill's just not a toy. It ended up scraping her face. So she has a pretty significant friction burn on her cheek right now. This is my hand from spinning around, reaching down to grab her. And you guys, it happened like that, right?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about maybe 4 seconds, maybe, of her being stuck between the wall and the back end of the treadmill. But it
Oh.
was incredibly traumatic. She is such a trooper. She, went to school yesterday. I was like, if you don't want to go to school, you don't have to go to school, like thinking, oh my God, kids are going to be awful. Kids are going to be mean. Kids are going to make her feel self-conscious about it. But the teacher told the class what happened at the beginning of the day. And she, was able to make it through and she had a great day. And so that was my most recent mom fail was, and I feel guilty about it. I'm carrying that guilt of like, I should have just said no, but it was an example of where I was like, well, I'm right here. What's the worst that can happen? And so here we are a few days later, still kind of smarting from
Oh.
that experience. Very
That's
scary.
so scary. Man, we don't have a treadmill, but we have a Peloton bike, and that same thing. It's in our garage, and our kids just want to go on it all the time. And so I actually finally my son is in first grade too. He's 6, and I let him go on it now. But the problem with that is once you let one, the 4.5-year-old wants to go on now, and she cannot reach. And I'm like, this is just going to turn disastrous. It hasn't yet, but this is probably my reminder to just say no.
Well, that's kind of what my hope is. My hope is like that, I'm incredibly responsible. I feel like I make good decisions. I was standing right behind her and I thought, well, super mom me, if anything happens, I'm just going to swoop in and be able to, and I couldn't. It pulled her back so quickly and my reaction time wasn't fast enough. I spun around as fast as I could on my pivot leg, to swing back. And even by then, we were just lucky that it didn't get her eye, like it
Yeah.
was so close to this part of her face that got the friction burn on it. And so she's very funny. She tells everybody when she's now like talking about it. She doesn't like to talk about it, but she does tell people, you only get 2 eyes.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
She's like, skin grows back, but eyes don't.
Facts.
It-
Wow. Well, I hope she heals quickly.
It sucks in the moment, but that's going to be one of those family lore stories, right? That we all have growing up. That's just going to be like, remember that time? So that's
Yeah, right.
fortunately,
Exactly.
that things have to be made
I
sometimes.
always tell the girls the story about how when I broke my wrist when I was 6 years old, I was on the monkey bars at my neighbor's house, fell off the monkey bars, got home, and my parents, God love them, did the best they could. But I guarantee did not have health insurance when we were kids. And so they were freaking out. And my dad made a makeshift, cast out of popsicle sticks and duct tape. And it wasn't until I was sobbing in my bed at like 3 o'clock in the morning that my parents were finally like, we should probably take her to the hospital, you know? And so it's fun. So you mentioned the lore, those stories. My daughters tell that story. They'll be like, remember when grandpa wouldn't go to the hospital and he put popsicle sticks on your wrist? And I'm like, I do. I remember.
Well, sucks, but that's how it's got to happen sometimes. So
Oh
I'm
my
glad she's
God.
okay. I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
Last question, Jen. Best advice you've ever received about being a working mom in sports?
Oh, I think you guys have heard this. It's if you're juggling the balls, know which balls are glass and which balls are rubber, right? Which balls you can drop and which ones you can't. My kids are always the glass balls, you know, and it's so, you know, whatever that looks like, whether it's, you know, making sure that we have that consistent support system. You know, we've had the luxury of having the same sitters for an extended period of time. That stability that, you know, gives to my family when I can't be around. You know, I feel great about that. Releases the anxiety that I feel when I'm traveling because I know they're in good hands. It's not just kind of being passed around from person to person. But there are things that are going to fall through the cracks, you know, and if the laundry doesn't get done, the laundry doesn't get done. If, you know, I haven't swept the house or whatever, it doesn't even have to be like maintaining the household stuff, you know. I've even told my kids this. They'll be like, Mom, you forgot that today was Mardi Gras day, you know, and then articulating to the kids that like in the grand scheme of things, I know it sucked that you didn't have your green on or you didn't have your purple on today, but you know, it's not that big of a deal, right? And that also
Yeah.
builds some resilience in them. They always say now, as a parent, you're not supposed to run the lunch to the school anymore,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's what I was gonna say. It's probably also like a teaching opportunity now that they're a little bit older, where like if my son, there was what was it? Oh, he wanted money for this like Kona Ice shave ice truck that they have every Tuesday, by the way, in like the fall and the spring. And I finally, I mean, I was also sick of like paying $5 for shave ice every single Tuesday. Like, come on, like that's a little bit much. But my deal with him was if you remind me Tuesday morning, I will make sure you have that. But if you don't get mad at me when you don't have $5 in your backpack kind of thing. Cause it's also on them. Like if they have a special day at school, like maybe you should learn what the day is and make sure you have your outfit picked out beforehand.
Okay, can we have a conversation very quickly because I know we're wrapping up soon about the madness at the schools, okay? And this is no disrespect to the teachers and the
No.
educators who do an incredible job supporting our kids and lifting them up and obviously teaching them, but the days have gotten out of control,
Out of control.
okay? If it's not the 100th day of school, they have to bring in 100 of these little
Yeah.
treats to throw into the trail mix. It's Mardi Gras day and they
Yeah.
have to wear purple or yellow
We
or
had
green.
peace week. Last
I-
week we had peace week, which meant every single day was a different theme. And I'm like, we already do this the week before Christmas, right? They have every day as a different
But
thing.
pajama day and
Yeah.
all of it.
I'm
Crazy.
still picking up from Valentine's Day. Okay. Like, can we not do little gifts for Valentine's Day? Like, is that
Right.
too?
Oh, I actually like that
The
part just
tchotchke.
because
It's so much stuff.
So much stuff. Yeah.
it is so much
So
stuff.
much stuff. And like it's such a
Yeah.
challenge for us moms to figure out like I don't want my kids to have more candy. So I'm not going to give other kids more candy.
Yep.
So like then we're doing the tchotchkes and it's like, well, what's something that's practical? This year we handed out mini stress balls.
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Because I was like, all got stress. Okay.
we got little like mochi. They're called mochi things. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
a Japanese thing. They're little squishy
Yeah.
toys. But I liked it only because I mean it took like all night of I think 2 nights we spent like multiple hours because I wanted the kids to write them themselves. But the cool part that I even remember as a kid, you know, you have like your favorite friends, obviously, your favorite classmates. And so you painstakingly pick like, ooh, who's gonna get the flower one versus like the purple rhino.
I remember doing that, and our school has eliminated it. They don't even put names on the Valentines anymore. Everything is just you walk around and you stuff it in the box.
Wow.
And I know. Yeah, it's become
Wow,
very
so equitable. I like it a little bit.
I do like the writing. Now that the kids can write, that takes something off my plate. So I do
Yes.
enjoy that part. Wow.
huge.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Yeah, special days, gals, like, you know, and then and they do a good job of like trying to give you advance notice.
Yeah.
But we're
That's
making
not what
cupcakes
that's
for
so, I'm
the day,
sorry.
and
I'm not.
bringing sprinkles, and like I'm like, right, sprinkles, and then stickers is the other thing. The teachers always ask for stickers so they can put them on their work, right? But they always ask for theme stickers, so it's like,
Oh,
can we
wow.
get their stickers? What about some Christmas stickers? So what I do is I just buy all of them on Amazon
Yeah.
and I hand them the box
Right.
and go, here's your St. Patrick's Day stickers. We got your Flag Day stickers, your Arbor Day stickers. Like, you got all the stickers.
Jamie and I
Ah,
were saying this. Jamie got to work in the city, and we actually did the pod in person, which was so much better. And I hope one day we can do again with you two sometime, Jen. But we were talking about how, thank God, we have the resources that we have. Like, maybe that's
overnight
why these
delivery.
schools are doing these days. Like, there's no other way to do it. Where are we going to go? Run to Target every day and get stuff? I don't. What would we do? What do our mothers do? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
God.
Yeah.
At least there's
And like, for dress up days, I know that we're all hitting up Amazon, right? My daughter had, February 2nd. She's in second grade. So it was tutu day.
wow.
We don't own a tutu.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I
Wow.
let her go on Amazon. I let her pick out the tutu that she wanted. It was very
Man.
fun. It was like $11 or whatever. But like, it was another thing where I was like, really?
Yeah.
Tutu day?
Yeah.
That's not even a thing.
So
That's
Jen,
so
we'll
funny.
do the whole the PTA soon, right? I'm guessing. Is that coming? No.
Who has time for that? No,
No.
again, I really appreciate the women who dedicate their time to
course.
that. Because the only thing I can dedicate is some dollars. Here you are. What
Yeah.
do you need? Okay.
And I will
Fair.
say, Jamie, to the shaved ice point, like I kind of really have it out for the ice cream ladies that stand out every day after school. Like, can you not with the bell? And you're just making me look bad because I keep saying no. So I hear you. Like,
I
why
know.
every day? Why?
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
$5 ice. It's kind of a lot every week
That's inflation,
But
baby.
in this economy. Have gone much longer than we typically do because of how great a guest you've been, Jen. We really appreciate you being so generous with your time and your insight and just continuing to be a leader. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but anyone who knows Jen has probably had a similar experience where on National Girls and Women's Sports Day, somehow there's just a little treat that pops up in your Venmo from Jen Lada saying, thanks for being you. And you are an awesome woman in sports. So that is the kind of person Jen is. And I feel lucky to be in her orbit. And I know Tori does too. So thanks again for everything, all that you do, and for taking some time to join us here on Babes in Sports.
of course, I think the thing that I would leave you guys with is when I first started out in this industry, it felt like women were really pitted against each other, that there was only so much space that women could occupy. And if there was one female sportscaster in a newsroom, well, that was enough. And then if there was one or two in the press box, well, that was enough. And so we were sort of forced to be very territorial about that space. And it was kind of unattractive, to feel like you had to hold on so tightly to that real estate because there wasn't enough offered. And what I've loved about my 25 years in this business is that the real estate keeps growing and there is enough space for everybody and there are roles for everybody and people can like find what they're good at and what they bring to the sports broadcasting space or the writing space or whatever it may be, the executive suite. And like, I have loved to see the growth. I have loved to see, because fair or unfair, it has really allowed everybody to be so much more supportive of each other. And I think we always wanted to be, but we were sort of programmed to believe that for the sake of our livelihood, for the sake of our family, our paycheck, and those types of things, we couldn't possibly allow anyone else in. And that's probably the best thing about being a woman in sports in 2026 is that there are so many of us now.
Yes. Preach.
Preach.
I feel that. I feel that very strongly as well. So yeah, shout out to all of the young girls who want to work in sports and also the women who currently work in sports that
Doing it.
there's room for us all. We got this, and we are hoping that you'll continue to join us every so often as we continue to bring fresh guests with fresh perspectives on Babes in Sports. Thanks so much, Jen.
Love you, Jen.
All right, babes, that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and like us wherever you get your podcasts.